What's up, guys? Today we're going to get into the balancing apparatus that we could use for handstands. If you haven't noticed already, there are many different styles of hand balancing, and people actually use different things that they can handstand on, like the things that are behind me today. And today we're going to get into the different apparatuses that we could use to handstand on, and also what are the pros and cons, which one is the easiest, which one might be more difficult, and the style that fits you the best. So let's get into it. So the first one is obviously the floor, which is my personal favorite. It is also probably one of the hardest apparatuses or surfaces that you could balance on. Why? Because the floor never moves. It stays still, so you have to move your entire body to balance with the floor and not the other way around. Later on, when we introduce canes, you'll notice that the canes actually move with you and balance with you like a dance, but the floor does not do that. The floor is probably the most unforgiving surface or apparatus that you can balance on because you're all on your own. While the floor is probably one of the hardest modes that you can balance on, it is also probably the easiest to get into because everybody basically has access to a floor, and also it is a lot less scary than, say, balancing on canes, which are high. Floor is probably my personal favorite, and it's a surface that I spend the most time on because it really truly tests your balancing abilities and your reaction and timing. I spend majority, I would say 90% of my training on the floor, and those skills actually can translate to the blocks or the canes pretty well. But I can't say that the other way around.
So you might often see hand balancers using wooden boards like this under their hands while in handstand. It is usually for people who have carpeted floors or soft surfaces, and this provides an even and hard surface for them to balance on, so that every action they're doing with their body is predictable, as opposed to handstanding on the sand or on a mattress where when you're pushing, it's squishy, it's going down, and you're not getting the same response that you would on a wooden floor.
Now let's move on to the blocks. So we have some blocks here, and these are rectangular blocks. They have a lot of different sizes and shapes out there. There are some blocks that are in a circular shape. There are some blocks that are on a decline. Basically, blocks give you an extra surface area that you can grip. Hence, it makes things a little bit easier. It's also good for people that have bad wrist injuries, because when you're grabbing the block, it forms less of an angle with your wrist versus when you're doing it on the floor. When you have something to grip, to hold on to, you can activate your fingers much more and control your body position a lot more than you would have on the floor. However, your surface area for balancing actually gets smaller with blocks, because when we're doing blocks, you're only balancing on this rectangular surface. Whereas on the floor, you can open your hands a little bit bigger and you can lean left to right, forward and back just a little bit more and still have the balance there. With the block, if you lean a little bit too far one way, while you might have the fingertip strength to hold yourself there, the surface area is actually smaller. So if you lean a little bit too far that way, you're basically falling down. I would say the blocks are definitely easier than balancing on the floor. And to me, I use blocks to train different one-arm handstand drills like block walks, block striking, and so on.
So even if you are primarily a floor balancer, sometimes it's also a good idea to get a set of blocks for drills such as this. This is block striking, primarily a one-arm handstand drill where I'm really training the coordination of my legs, my hips, also the pushing and engagement from my upper body, and also I'm changing surfaces from the floor to the block. So it's giving me a whole array of challenges that I have to tackle while still being able to balance. This is what blocks can offer you.
And now we're going to move on to the canes. So we have a pair of canes here. So usually the canes come in this size. This is a standard size for usually for performance. When we're doing performance, we want the canes to be just high enough so that the audience can see us even if they're in the back. They do make canes that are a little bit shorter, and I think those are the ones that are good for entry level or for kids that want to get into hand balancing but can't jump up this high. Usually canes would be, I think, the easiest out of the three that I introduced because the canes wobble. So the more the canes wobble, the more they're balancing with you, and the floor is basically moving with your balance, with your body, with your arm, and you're having this dance along with the canes. That way, when you're off center a little bit, you have some room for error and you can come back to the center quite easily. When we're on the canes, we have the feeling of tightening our body and everything locked, and the canes will move to your balance. With the canes, the hardest part usually is the entry. People are usually very scared of jumping up the canes because if they fall, they might fall down a strange way and hurt themselves. Or the height. The height usually gives people problems because when they're handstanding on something like this, which is very small and very high, it really freaks them out. So when you're first starting with canes, it might be a good idea to start with something a little bit shorter so you get used to a little bit of a height difference. However, with shorter canes, you're not going to get as much wobble as you might with canes like this because there's a shorter travel distance. So with less wobble, you're really getting a lot less of that aid effect to help you balance.
So as you can see, the canes are already wobbling, and as I move into one arm, you would see that wobbling would exaggerate quite a bit because all my weight is concentrated on that single cane. Now, the wobbles actually help me balance quite a bit because they're moving with my center of gravity, and as long as I keep my body relatively stable and firm, I should be able to balance quite easily, a lot more than the floor anyways, because the wobbling of the canes is almost giving me this cushion and this margin of error so that I do not fall instantly and I can make the necessary adjustments just in time.
When you're first starting out, my recommendation is try outside at the park on the grass. That way when you fall, it's not that scary and you have the confidence to go up. So the question you might be asking is, which one is right for you? And that's really a personal choice. I know a lot of hand balancers who only balance on the canes or only on the floor or only on the blocks. But I would say that the most universal surface would be the floor because the floor skills usually translate pretty well to the blocks and to the canes. However, if you only train on the canes and go back to the floor, it would be pretty difficult, generally speaking. So I would try out all three and see which one suits you best. The canes do run a little bit expensive if you're just starting hand balancing, so I would try the blocks first, or maybe canes are even on a shorter side. The most accessible would be, of course, the floor. With the canes, if you have low ceilings, if you have a tight space at home, they would be pretty hard to train on. I can only train these at home with my low ceiling because I know how to maneuver and fall with it. If you've never been on canes before, I would not recommend you to use them at home. Try it outside, try it in class, at a circus training center, anywhere but home where you can easily hurt yourself. Let me know what you think. Do you like blocks? Do you like floor? Or do you like canes? Thank you for watching the video. If you guys like the video, please hit like, hit subscribe, and comment on the videos. Thank you so much. Have a good one. Bye-bye.